I am sitting in my attorney's office pen hovering over the inheritance papers when my father's final words echo in my mind. At least you finally did something right. 30 years old. And those were the last words David Wilson ever spoke to me. It is funny how life works. The daughter he called worthless just inherited everything while his golden child got nothing. The journey from being the unwanted daughter to this moment was not easy, but it taught me something invaluable about finding your worth when the people who should love you most simply cannot see it. Before we dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if you have ever felt like the second choice in your own family, and do not forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us we are stronger than we think. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, I learned early that love in the Wilson household came with conditions. I was born in 1994 to David and Linda Wilson. My father was a former college football player who worked at the local automotive plant, still chasing glory through anyone willing to carry his dreams. My mother, Linda, was a nurse, the only person who seemed to understand that children need encouragement, not constant comparison. When my brother Tyler arrived 2 years later, I watched my father's face light up in a way I had never seen before. David finally had his son, his legacy, his second chance at greatness. I was 6 years old when I first realized I had become invisible in my own home. Every evening after work, Dad would take Tyler to our backyard to practice throwing footballs. I remember standing at the kitchen window, watching them laugh together while I folded laundry or helped Mom with dinner preparations. When I asked if I could join them, Dad would shake his head and say, "This is boy time, Bianca. You need to learn responsibility inside the house." The pattern continued through every milestone. Tyler's 8th birthday brought 30 kids to our backyard, complete with a bounce house and a football-themed cake that cost more than my mother's weekly grocery budget. When my 8th birthday arrived, I got a store-bought cake and dinner at home with just family. "We cannot do parties every time," Dad explained, though somehow Tyler's celebrations never seemed to strain the budget. Even learning to drive became another reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Tyler was 14 when Dad started taking him to empty parking lots, teaching him to handle Dad's pickup truck. "Boys need to know how to drive early," he would say. "It is part of becoming a man." When I turned 16 and asked for driving lessons, Dad told me I could wait until I was 18 and could pay for professional lessons myself. The academic achievements that should have made any parent proud seemed to bounce off Dad like raindrops on glass. I still remember the day in 5th grade when I won first place at the state science fair. My project on renewable energy sources had impressed every judge, and I could not wait to share the news at home. I called Mom from school, practically vibrating with excitement. "Honey, that is incredible. I am so proud of you," Mom said, and I could hear the genuine joy in her voice. "When is the awards ceremony?" "Tonight at 7. Can you and Dad come?" There was a pause. "I will definitely be there, sweetheart. Let me talk to your father." That evening, I stood on the stage, accepting my award, scanning the audience for my parents. Mom was there in the front row, beaming and taking pictures with our old camera. Dad's seat remained empty. He was at Tyler's junior varsity football practice because the boy needs consistency in his training. When I got home that night, trophy in hand, Dad barely looked up from the television. "Good for you," he said, without turning around. "Now go help your mother with dinner." Mom tried to compensate for Dad's indifference, but she could not fill the void where a father's approval should have been. She would display my academic awards on the refrigerator and brag about my accomplishments to her friends at work. But in our house, the only achievements that mattered were the ones that happened on a football field. Tyler was not a bad brother. In fact, when Dad was not around, we got along well. He never asked for the favoritism he received, but he also never questioned it or stood up for me when Dad's comments became particularly cutting. By the time we reached high school, the dynamic was so entrenched that Tyler had learned to expect special treatment as naturally as breathing. High school brought new opportunities for both of us and new ways for Dad to show his preferences. Tyler made varsity football as a sophomore, which was genuinely impressive. Dad attended every game, every practice he could manage, and talked about Tyler's athletic potential with anyone who would listen. Our neighbors knew Tyler's rushing statistics, his position rankings, and his college prospects before they knew my name. Meanwhile, I was building a different kind of success story. I maintained a 4.0 grade point average while taking advanced placement courses in everything from calculus to European history. I joined the debate team, became editor of the school newspaper, and volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends. None of this seemed to register with Dad as particularly noteworthy. The contrast became most obvious during my junior year when college recruiters started calling. Northwestern University offered me a full academic scholarship covering tuition room board and even a stipend for books. It was the kind of opportunity that most families would celebrate for months. When the acceptance letter arrived, I ran to Dad with the official documents, barely able to contain my excitement. "Dad, look, I got into Northwestern with a full ride. They want me for their pre-law program." He glanced at the papers briefly before handing them back. "Hope you do not waste it like everything else," he said. Then he turned to Tyler, who was sitting at the kitchen table. "Son, did you hear back from Coach Martinez about that summer camp?" The summer before I left for college became a master class in favoritism. While I worked 2 part-time jobs to save money for personal expenses and textbooks not covered by my scholarship, Tyler received a brand new Honda Civic for his 18th birthday. "Every young man needs reliable transportation for college," Dad announced at Tyler's graduation party. Never mind that Tyler was only going to the local community college, or that I would be taking Greyhound buses back and forth to Northwestern. During Tyler's graduation celebration, Dad gave a speech to our gathered relatives about how proud he was of his son's determination and character. He talked about Tyler's plans to transfer to a 4-year university after completing his associate degree and how football had taught him valuable life lessons about teamwork and perseverance. When someone asked about my upcoming departure for Northwestern, Dad simply said, "Bianca is good with books," and changed the subject back to Tyler. The night before I left for college, I found myself packing my belongings into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Everything I owned fitting into what I could carry on public transportation. Tyler knocked on my door around 10 p.m., looking uncomfortable. "Hey, Bianca, I just wanted to say good luck at Northwestern. I know you are going to do great things." "Thanks, Tyler. That means a lot." He hesitated in my doorway. "For what it is worth, I think Dad is wrong about you. You are the smartest person I know." It was a rare moment of honesty between us, and I treasured it, even as I wondered why he never said such things when Dad was around to hear them. College became my sanctuary, a place where hard work was rewarded and intelligence was valued. I thrived in Northwestern's rigorous academic environment, making Dean's List every semester and building relationships with professors who saw my potential. But even my successes felt hollow when I called home to share them, and Dad's response was inevitably lukewarm. "I got selected for the honors program in political science," I would tell him. "That is nice. Tyler just got scouted by 3 Division II schools for football." When I was accepted for a prestigious internship at a Chicago law firm during my junior year, Dad's reaction was typical. "Hope it teaches you something useful," he said. Speaking of useful, Tyler made starting quarterback this season. The pattern never changed. No matter what I accomplished, Tyler's achievements were always more important, more worth celebrating, more deserving of attention. I began to wonder if there was something fundamentally wrong with me, some defect that made me unworthy of my father's pride or love. Everything came to a head during my senior year at Northwestern. I had been accepted to Harvard Law School with a partial scholarship, an achievement that represented years of relentless studying and sacrifice. I was also dating Marcus, a fellow pre-law student who treated me like I mattered, who celebrated my successes without reservation. I decided to drive home for Thanksgiving break to share my law school news in person, hoping that maybe this time Dad would understand the magnitude of what I had accomplished. Harvard Law School only accepted about 10% of applicants. Getting in was not just an achievement. It was a validation of everything I had worked toward. I arrived home to find Dad and Tyler in the living room surrounded by beer bottles and football trophies. Tyler had just been accepted to the roster of a semi-professional football team, which paid barely enough to cover gas money, but represented his first step toward his dream of professional athletics. Dad was more animated than I had seen him in years, calling relatives to share the news about his son's latest success. "Dad, Tyler, I have some news to share too," I said, settling into the chair across from them. "Sure, sweetheart, in a minute," Dad said without looking at me. He was dialing another number on the phone. "Hey, Rick, you will never guess what Tyler just accomplished." I waited through 3 more phone calls before Dad finally hung up and turned his attention to me. Tyler was grinning still high from all the attention and praise. "What is your news, Bianca?" Dad asked, though his tone suggested he was already losing interest. "I got accepted to Harvard Law School, with a scholarship." The room went quiet for exactly 3 seconds before Dad nodded dismissively. "Law school is for people who cannot do real work," he said. "Tyler here is going to make something of himself in the real world." I felt something break inside me at that moment. Not just disappointment, but a fundamental shift in how I saw myself and my place in this family. I had spent 22 years trying to earn something that was never going to be available to me. That night, I lay in my childhood bedroom listening to Dad and Mom talk in the kitchen below. Their voices carried through the old house's thin walls, and what I heard shattered whatever hope I still harbored. "I do not know where we went wrong with her," Dad was saying. "All this school stuff, these fancy degrees. She is going to end up alone and miserable, mark my words. Tyler has heart. He has character. Bianca just has books." "She is brilliant, David," Mom replied quietly. "She is going to be successful." Success is not just about money or degrees, Linda. Tyler knows how to connect with people. He knows what matters in life. Bianca thinks she is better than everyone else because she can memorize textbooks. I packed my bags that night and left before anyone woke up. I drove back to Northwestern feeling like I had been holding my breath for 22 years and was finally allowed to exhale. The next few years brought a string of achievements that should have made any parent proud. I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern. I excelled at Harvard Law School, making law review and graduating in the top 5% of my class. I was recruited by Sullivan and Cromwell, one of the most prestigious law firms on Wall Street, with a starting salary of $180,000. Tyler, meanwhile, had suffered a knee injury that ended his semi-pro career before it really began. He moved back home and cycled through a series of entry-level jobs, never finding anything that held his interest for more than a few months. But Dad continued to believe in Tyler's eventual comeback, continued to make excuses for his lack of direction. When I was 25 and Tyler was 23, I made partner track at my firm and bought a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. I called home to share the news, still hoping for some acknowledgement of what I had built for myself. "That is nice, honey," Dad said. "How much are you paying for that apartment?" "Seems like a waste of money when you could be saving for a real house." "It is an investment in my future, Dad, and I love the city." "Well, Tyler is thinking about starting his own business. Now that takes real courage." Tyler's business turned out to be a landscaping company that folded after 6 months when he realized how much physical work was actually involved. But Dad's faith in his golden child never wavered. The breaking point came during Thanksgiving of my 26th year. I had just been promoted to senior associate and was on track to make partner before I turned 30. I had also started dating James, a fellow attorney who understood my drive and supported my ambitions. Life was good, better than I had ever imagined it could be. I decided to go home for the holiday, bringing James with me so he could meet my family. It would be his first time seeing the dynamics I had described to him, and I was nervous about his reaction. We arrived on Thursday morning to find Tyler passed out on the living room couch. Empty beer bottles scattered around him like confetti. Dad was sitting in his recliner looking defeated, but still protective of his son. "Tyler had a rough night," Dad explained when he saw us staring. "He has been going through a tough time since the landscaping thing did not work out." "Maybe he should consider getting help," I suggested gently. "There are programs for people who are struggling with alcohol." Dad's face darkened. "Tyler does not need programs. He needs support from his family. He needs people who believe in him instead of judging him." The implication was clear. I was not being supportive enough of my brother's alcoholism. Later that day, after Tyler had sobered up enough to join us for dinner, Dad raised his glass of wine to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he said, looking around the table. "Tyler, you know you are still my champion son. You have got heart and character that cannot be taught." He turned to me next. "And Bianca, congratulations on your promotion. I am sure all that hard work will pay off someday." The difference in tone was subtle, but unmistakable. Tyler was celebrated for his character despite his failures. I was acknowledged for my work as if it were a hobby I might eventually outgrow. After dinner, James and I were loading the dishwasher when he finally spoke up about what he had witnessed. "Bianca, I had no idea it was this bad. The way your father talks to you about you, it is not normal." "I know. I have gotten used to it over the years." "You should not have to get used to being treated like you do not matter. You are one of the most accomplished people I know, and he acts like Tyler's unemployment is more impressive than your law career." That night, lying in my childhood bed next to James, I realized he was right. I had normalized behavior that was fundamentally toxic. I had spent decades trying to earn something that was never going to be available to me. And in the process, I had allowed my father's opinion to define my worth. The final straw came 6 months later when Mom had a heart attack. I was in the middle of preparing for a major case when Tyler called me panicked and barely coherent. "Bianca, Mom collapsed at work. She is at Mount Carmel Hospital. You need to come home." I dropped everything and caught the next flight to Columbus. By the time I arrived at the hospital, Mom was stable, but needed emergency surgery to repair a blocked artery. The medical bills were going to be substantial, and I immediately began making arrangements to cover whatever insurance did not pay. While I was at the billing office handling paperwork and insurance claims, Dad and Tyler sat in the waiting room. When I returned from organizing Mom's financial affairs, I found them exactly where I had left them, looking helpless and overwhelmed. "The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning," I told them. "I have arranged for her to see one of the best cardiac surgeons in Ohio. Insurance will cover most of it, and I will handle the rest." Dad nodded absently. Good. Tyler and I have been talking, and we think maybe we should get a second opinion. I already arranged for 2 consultations with specialists. The team here is excellent, but I want to make sure we are doing everything possible." A young resident approached our group with a clipboard full of forms. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Wilson's family? I need someone to sign some consent forms and discuss post-operative care options." Dad immediately pointed to Tyler. "My son handles the important decisions for our family." I stared at him in disbelief. Tyler looked equally surprised, but he did not correct Dad's statement. Here I was, the one with the law degree, the one who had spent the afternoon coordinating Mom's care and arranging payment for her treatment, and Dad was designating Tyler as the decision-maker because he was male. That night, I made the most difficult and liberating decision of my life. I was done trying to earn my father's respect. I was done accepting crumbs of affection from people who should have loved me unconditionally. I was done being the family's invisible daughter. I arranged for Mom to be transferred to New York Presbyterian Hospital as soon as she was stable enough to travel. The cardiac care program there was world-class, and I could oversee her treatment personally while maintaining my work schedule. Dad protested the move, but Mom was eager to spend time in New York and receive the best possible care. For the next 5 years, I built the life I had always wanted. I made partner at my firm, becoming the youngest person in company history to achieve that milestone. I established a scholarship fund for women pursuing law degrees, helping other young women avoid the financial struggles I had faced. I bought a beautiful apartment overlooking Central Park, filled it with art and books, and created a space that reflected my values and interests. Mom recovered completely from her heart attack and began spending several months each year in New York with me. She loved the city's museums and theaters, and I treasured the opportunity to show her the life I had built. During her visits, she would tell me stories about her own dreams from when she was young, ambitions she had set aside to raise children and support Dad's modest career. "I always knew you were special," she told me one evening as we watched the sunset from my apartment. "I just wish I had done more to protect you from your father's attitude." "You did what you could, Mom, and look how everything turned out. I am happy." Tyler, meanwhile, continued to struggle with direction and purpose. He cycled through various jobs and relationships, never finding stability in either area. Dad continued to make excuses for Tyler's failures while expressing skepticism about my success. "Money cannot buy character," he would tell Mom during their phone conversations. "Tyler has what Bianca will never have: heart." But I had stopped caring about Dad's opinions. I had found my worth in my work, my relationships, my contributions to my community. I was dating a wonderful man who appreciated my intelligence and drive. I had close friendships with colleagues and neighbors who valued my thoughts and opinions. I had built a life that was full and meaningful without requiring my father's approval. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in March. Tyler's voice was shaky when he told me Dad had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was not good, maybe 6 months if he was lucky. "The treatment is expensive," Tyler said. "Insurance will not cover everything, and I do not have the money to help." There was a long pause while I absorbed the request he was not quite making directly. "How much do you need?" I asked. "Maybe $50,000, maybe more depending on how long." "I will take care of it," I said. "Send me the hospital's billing information." "Bianca, you do not have to do this. I know Dad was not fair to you." "I am not doing it for him, Tyler. I am doing it because it is the right thing to do." I paid for Dad's treatment, but I did not visit him during his illness. I could not bring myself to sit beside his hospital bed and pretend that we had the kind of relationship that would make such visits meaningful. Instead, I sent flowers arranged for private nursing care and made sure he had access to the best specialists available. 3 weeks before Dad died, Mom called to tell me he was asking for me. "He wants to apologize, Bianca. He knows he was wrong about you, about how he treated you." I thought about it for several days before deciding to make the trip to Columbus. I was not going for Dad's sake, or even for Mom's. I was going for myself to close a chapter that had been open too long. The man I found in that hospital bed looked nothing like the strong, opinionated father I remembered. Cancer had reduced him to skin and bones, and his eyes held a sadness I had never seen before. "Bianca," he whispered when I entered the room. "You came." "I came," I agreed, sitting in the chair beside his bed. "I was wrong about you," he said, his voice barely audible. "You became everything I never could be. Everything I should have wanted for both my children." "I know you were wrong, Dad. I figured that out a long time ago." "Tyler needed my support because he was weak. You never needed anyone. You were always going to be fine." I considered his words carefully before responding. "Every child needs their parents' love and support, Dad. I just learned to find my worth somewhere else when I could not find it at home." He was quiet for a long time, staring at the ceiling. Finally, he looked at me again. "At least you finally did something right," he said. "You became the person I should have raised Tyler to be." It was not the apology I might have wanted, but it was an acknowledgement. More importantly, it was closure. I realized that sitting there, that Dad's approval had never been about my worth. It had been about his limitations, his inability to see value in qualities he did not understand or possess himself. I stayed with him for 2 more hours talking about my work, my life in New York, the scholarship fund I had established. For the first time in my life, he listened without comparison, without judgment, without trying to redirect the conversation to Tyler's struggles or potential. When I left that day, I felt something I had never experienced before: genuine peace with my family situation. I was not angry anymore. I was not hurt. I was simply free. Dad died 10 days later. At his funeral, people spoke about his dedication to his family, his love for football, his loyalty to his friends. Tyler gave a eulogy about what a supportive father Dad had been, how he had always believed in him even when others doubted. I did not speak at the service, but I did not feel bitter about being overlooked one final time. Instead, I felt grateful for the journey that had brought me to this place of self-acceptance and inner peace. After the funeral, Tyler and I had coffee together for the first time in years. We talked honestly about our childhood, about Dad's favoritism, about how it had affected both of us. "I never deserved the treatment I got," Tyler admitted. "And you never deserved to be overlooked the way you were. Dad's approval was not based on who we actually were as people." "No, it was not," I agreed. "But we both had to find our own way regardless." "You found a good way," Tyler said. "I am still working on it." "It is never too late to build the life you want," I told him. "But you have to want it for yourself, not for anyone else's approval." 6 months after Dad's death, Tyler enrolled in community college to study business administration. He started seeing a counselor about his drinking and his relationship with failure. He began building a life based on his own values rather than trying to live up to Dad's expectations or compete with my achievements. Today, as I sit in this attorney's office signing the inheritance papers that Dad left entirely to me, I realize his final gift was not the money or the house. It was the recognition, however late, that I had always been worthy of love and respect. Some parents plant gardens in their children's hearts. Others plant thorns. But here is what I learned: you can always choose to bloom anyway. The question is not whether you are worthy of love. You always were. The question is whether you are brave enough to love yourself when others cannot see your worth. I hope this story resonates with those of you who have ever felt like the second choice in your own family. Please share in the comments below. Have you ever had to learn to value yourself when the people closest to you could not see your worth? Hit that like button if this story touched you. Subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult family dynamics, and share this with someone who might need to hear that they are enough exactly as they are. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth is not determined by anyone else's ability to see it. You have always been enough, and you always will be.